What if I told you that the secret to self-control has almost nothing to do with willpower? I know, it sounds completely wrong, but there's this surprising story that unfolded during the final years of the Vietnam War. And trust me, it changes everything we think we know about discipline. Okay, so our story starts back in 1971. The Vietnam War is still raging, and a couple of American congressmen fly over to visit the troops. But what they find there is a crisis that nobody, and I mean nobody, saw coming. It was a mystery that would end up challenging the very foundations of how we understand addiction and human behavior.
When researchers followed up, their fears were confirmed. The numbers were just staggering. As many as 1 in 5, that's 20% of U.S. soldiers in Vietnam, had become addicted to heroin. This wasn't some small, isolated problem. It was a full-blown epidemic inside the military, and it was causing a major panic back in Washington.
And that led to the million-dollar question. Back then, heroin addiction was pretty much seen as a life sentence, permanent, irreversible condition. So everyone was bracing for this massive public health crisis when thousands of addicted soldiers started coming back home. But what actually happened was something else entirely.
The research that followed, led by a scientist named Lee Robbins, was absolutely shocking. So get this. Typically, 90% of heroin users who go through rehab end up relapsing. 90%. But for the soldiers returning from Vietnam, that number was just 10%. An incredible 9 out of 10 soldiers simply stopped. Almost overnight. This was completely, utterly unheard of.
So, what in the world was going on? Did all these soldiers suddenly find some superhuman reserve of willpower that nobody else has? Well, as Robbins discovered, the answer was a clear no. The solution to this paradox wasn't found inside the soldiers' heads at all. It was in the world all around them.
The massive difference was their environment. Think about it. In Vietnam, soldiers were surrounded by constant triggers, or what we call cues. Heroin was easy to get, the stress of war was relentless, and their social circle was often other users. But the second they got on a plane and returned home, poof, all of those cues just vanished. The entire context changed.
And this is the crucial point, right here. The addiction wasn't some permanent flaw etched into who they were. It was deeply tied to the environment they were in. When you radically change the surroundings, the habit can just spontaneously dissolve. And for the time, this was a totally revolutionary idea.
This insight from the Vietnam War flies directly in the face of a belief that is so deeply ingrained in our culture about why we failed to break bad habits. I mean, we've all been told the same story our entire lives. Right? If you're struggling with a bad habit, it doesn't matter if it's smoking, eating junk food, or just procrastinating online, the standard advice is always, you just need more discipline. It's framed as a personal failing, almost like a moral weakness.
But does that idea actually hold up to scrutiny? Well, modern research has taken a really close look at those super disciplined people we all tend to admire, and what they found turns that whole old assumption completely on its head.
Let that sink in for a second. The people who look like they have superhuman self-control aren't actually heroes fighting these constant, brutal internal battles. Nope. They are masters of their environment. They are, in a sense, architects who design their lives to avoid temptation in the first place.
And this is the fundamental shift in thinking we need to make. The way to improve isn't by gritting your teeth and just wishing you had more willpower. It's by strategically designing the world around you so that doing the right thing is the easy thing, and doing the wrong thing is much, much harder.
So, why is our environment just so incredibly powerful? Well, to get that, we need to look at how habits actually get wired into our brains. And we need to understand the sneaky way that these external triggers can hijack our behavior without us even realizing it.
So check out this story about a therapist who used to smoke cigarettes while riding horses with a friend. She quits both smoking and riding for decades. But then, years and years later, the moment she gets back on a horse, bam, the craving for a cigarette hits her like a ton of bricks. The habit was asleep, it was dormant, but the cue, the horse, instantly woke it right back up.
Scientists actually have a name for this whole thing. It's called cue-induced wanting. It's basically when some external trigger in your environment sparks a compulsive, automatic desire to act. You see the cookie, you want the cookie. You hear that little notification sound on your phone, you want to check your phone. It's not a conscious choice, it's an automatic process.
And how fast are we talking here? Well, it's pretty much instantaneous. There was one study where they showed a picture of cocaine to an addict for just 33 milliseconds. That's literally faster than you can blink. And even that was enough to activate the reward pathways in their brain and create a craving.
And here's the kicker. The addicts in that study, they couldn't even tell you what they saw. Their desire was triggered before their conscious mind even had time to register the image. So what does that mean? It means your willpower is often fighting a battle against an enemy you didn't even see coming.
And this is exactly why just trying to resist temptation is frankly a losing game in the long run. It takes a tremendous amount of mental energy to constantly be saying no. Over time, we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. And our environment is the biggest system of all. Okay, so if willpower isn't the answer, then what is? Let's get really practical here. How do we stop being victims of our environment and start becoming the architects of it?
The core principle is actually beautifully simple. Don't fight the craving, prevent it from ever starting in the first place. The most practical and effective way to break a bad habit is to cut it off at the source by making its cue invisible.
Here are some powerful, real-world examples. If your phone is distracting you, don't just put it face down on your desk. Put it in another room entirely. If scrolling through social media makes you feel envious or just kind of crummy, don't just scroll past. Unfollow the accounts that trigger those feelings. You see, each one of these simple actions removes the cue and short-circuits the habit before it even begins.
And this really is the key message. Look, you can resist a cookie that's sitting on the counter once, maybe twice, but that takes energy every single time you see it. But putting the whole jar of cookies away in a cabinet so you don't even see them, that takes energy once, but it works forever. That is environmental design.
So, the real secret here isn't about becoming a more disciplined person. It's about creating a more disciplined environment. It really boils down to a simple two-part strategy. Make the cues for your good habits super obvious, and make the cues for your bad habits totally invisible. So this isn't just some abstract theory, right? It's a practical tool you can start using the second this is over. So I'll leave you with this. Take a look at your own environment. Your room, your desk, your phone. What's one small change, one single cue that you can make invisible that would set you on a better path starting today?